That's a great talk. I must say that I was in France the first time a few years ago, and then I would say that almost nobody knew what Lean Startup was about. So I'm very glad to be here today and see that Lean Startup can draw such a big crowd. It's, I think that Paris have really stepped up compared to just a few years ago. So let's see.
Is this presentation?
Yes.
Good.
Does it come up here as well? In the front?
No.
Oh, okay. Great.
You have to remember it.
Yeah, sure. That's why, yeah. Perfect. So what I want to do, I will have a short presentation now, hopefully no more than 15 minutes, about some lessons learned in one of my companies on how we used crowdfunding to go to pre-market. So basically the concept is that a product launch is more a continuous process and not a fixed date. When Google launched Gmail, they already had 100 million users for the beta version. The beta emblem was so popular among the early adopters that they wanted to bring it back when Gmail finally launched. So they made this function so you could bring back the beta version to Gmail. So in this context, when do you use a vehicle like crowdfunding to go to pre-market and learn from users? If you're going to take away one thing from this short talk, it is that most startups, they launch on crowdfunding too soon. So first you need to validate that you have a problem, then you need to validate that you're fixing the problem at cost that the customers are willing to pay. So basically, earlier, just a few years ago, startups, they went on platforms like Kickstarter earlier in the product development. But now crowdfunding is used more as a marketing channel, and people who visit the crowdfunding sites are more, they have higher demands on how the campaign looks and feel. So basically you also want to bring your own crowd to the platform. It's very few products that you can launch on Kickstarter and you will instant have enough followers. More often you will have to bring your own crowd to the platform you have chosen to launch on. Some examples, so the case study I will use is Playing Lean. It's an analog board game that teaches Lean Startup. I understand that there's some people here who tried the earlier version. It was actually so bad that when Frank played it, he thought that, okay, I will make a competitor. That's how bad it was. And that's actually a good thing, right? Because you want to launch as soon as possible. If you're not a little bit ashamed of your prototype, you're not launching soon enough. You have launched too late. So when the first prototype was that bad that one of the early adopters wanted to make a competitor, he gave us good feedback, so we were able to improve on the game. And luckily we did that even before we went to Kickstarter. So why Kickstarter? Well, if you have an analog board game, that's the place to go to. Kickstarter is also by far the biggest crowdfunding platform. It also have the highest success rate. I think it's around 35% of the campaigns that launch on Kickstarter succeed. An interesting part is that there are some scientists who have looked into the numbers, and they can, with a 74% accuracy, tell if your crowdfunding campaign will be successful or not 4 hours into the campaign, because it's all about launching, getting the traction straight away. So that is if anybody wants to look into it, its article is called Launch Hard or Go Home. So basically you need to have a good start. So we actually did 2 Kickstarter campaigns. It's a part of the lean startup ecosystem, that we don't just tell the polished success stories, but also tell about our failures. So our first campaign was total failure. I was traveling America for that campaign. I visited 16 cities in 7 states over the duration of 36 days. We did not succeed, but the second campaign we succeeded after 10 hours. So the key numbers is, if you have 36 people on your newsletter, don't launch on crowdfunding. You should have at least 1,000 that have signed up dedicated for your campaign. So what did we do differently between the 2 campaigns? Basically, if you see here, this is the, basically on the first launch, we still had another prototype iteration coming up, so we launched too soon. The second campaign, we could even have waited even more, but we wanted to get done with it. Basically, the ideal time to launch is when your prototype is complete and you have already started doing marketing. Perfect. So, and when you have launched, you go into production mode. Basically, a prototype and printing 1,000 is a different thing. Yeah. So how do you do pre-sales and build up to your pre-launch campaign or your crowdfunding campaign? Well, what we did, we got celebrity endorsement. If you're not able to get one celebrity within your industry to endorse your campaign before you launch, don't launch. I mean, you need to work on your elevator pitch or something. It's very powerful. I mean, we sent emails to people before Ash endorsed us, and people didn't answer. I mean, who are we? But when we saw them after Ash endorsed us, they actually answered, and he also helped us get 800 people that sign up for a newsletter over duration of 1 week. Build a proper email list and dedicated for the campaign, and don't be afraid to use it. Do pre-sale strategies. Basically, for our second campaign, we told people, buy a workshop. We said, okay, we come to Paris, we come to the Netherlands, we give you a workshop, and then they paid for the workshop when we launched on Kickstarter. So we hacked it. You could also consider, so what would we have done differently again? Well, I think you really need to understand the ecosystem in which you're operating. One example is that we didn't fully understand how hot and sexy Product Hunt is in America. It's basically a service that when you get featured there, it's a big thing, and we didn't monetize it properly. The same thing with media. Lean Startup is not as sexy in America anymore. It's yesterday's news. It's much more popular in France and in the German-speaking parts of Europe. So if you're going to launch, just like if you're going to March, you want to take advantage of the moon's gravity to propel you further on. So you need to plan which would be the thought leaders who will endorse you during your campaign. So 95% of the work doing a crowdfunding campaign is before the crowdfunding campaign starts. Some other alternative launch strategies are using a keynote at an event, do some invitation, get the invitation-only thing going for you. It's demands more work, it's more sophisticated, but if you get it to work, it's good. Basically, what you want to do is prepare for the unknown, because you will be working 60, 70 hours a week during the campaign, and in order to utilize that time the best, you need to do your homework before you launch, because as I said, the biggest problem is that most people launch too soon. So don't do that, and you have the opportunity to take the opportunities that arises. And that's on time.